Welcome to module number 1 of the Basic Biostatistics 2 course. In this module I'm going to show you how to open SPSS, how to open your database. I'm going to show you what you can see in the different windows of SPSS. Then I'm going to finally show you how to make some simple transformations, how for instance calculate body mass index based on height and weight, or how to recode continuous variables into categorical variables. I can also show you how to split the data for instance, gender, if you'd like to have the analysis for men only, or for older dwarfs only, or for any kind of subgroups alone. When you double click on the SPSS icon, this is the window you're going to see. It first asks you if you'd like to open an existing data source or any other data file. As we haven't opened yet the Santa Claus Superstar database, you can close this window by clicking on cancel. The data editor is still completely empty as we haven't opened yet our data file. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to File, Open, and to Data, and we're going to search for the database of the Santa Claus Super Study. In my case I have it saved in this folder here, and by double click I'm going to open the data set. As you see, we have now a data sheet with a lot of information. At this point I have to tell you that down on the left side we have two different sheets of the data set. We have variable view or we have data view. By clicking on data view I'm going to see the entire data. By clicking variable view, as we are now, this gives us the definition of each variable. For instance, if you click on the row number 2 is the variable education. The entire row contains the definition of the variable education. So the education has 1 decimal, which means education was measured with 1 decimal, for instance 5.1 years. In label, if you can widen it, you can see education is measured in years. For categorical variables, we're going to have values. And you can see that education is measures in scale, which means it's a continuous variable. For instance, if you have a look at smoking, which is in row number 12, smoking is a categorical variable because it's coded as yes or no. How do we know that? You can go here in values, we click on values, we have 3 little dots in the gray case, we click on it, and we can see that 1 means no smoking and 2 means yes, the dwarf is smoking. We click on OK, and we can see finally here measurements. If you click on measurements, this is nominal. We can define each variable as scale, which means continuous, ordinal, or nominal. Ordinal would be if there's a certain differences between the categories, for instance low, middle and high, or low, moderate and high, if there's a certain order within the category. In smoking, for instance, non-smoking or yes smoking, there's no difference. There's not one category which is better than the other. But better from the health point of view, yes, but they're both equal. You can see that the dataset consists of 22 different variables, and when you open your data, take your time and have a look at the definition of each of the variables, and have a look at the labels. We're going to see how the variable is measured. You can also look at the values and to see how the variables are defined. For instance, as I mentioned, 1 is non-smoking, so if the dwarfs do not smoke, then in the data entry sheet you're going to find a 1. Now let's change the sheet and go to data view. In data view we have all the information of each dwarfs. Each row represents the data of the survey or the questionnaire of 1 dwarf. Highlighted now in orange we have the entire data of dwarf number 1. The very first row we see are the different kind of variables. We have age, of education, systolic blood pressure of month number 1, diastolic blood pressure month number 1, and the different values. Dwarf number 1 is 2101 years old. You see the dwarfs are pretty old. He has an average of 9.0 years of education, a systolic blood pressure of 142 of month number 1. Up to height, they're continuous variables, as they're not categorized and you have the absolute values of each of the measurements. Here we see, for instance, the values of smoking. Some dwarfs have smoking coded as 2, others have smoking coded as 1. As we remember from the variable view sheet, we can go and have a look what does 2 mean. 2 means, yes, the dwarf is smoking, as you probably still remember. 1 means it's a non-smoking dwarf. And so forth. We can have a look at all the variables we have in the data sheet. By clicking on this little arrow, we can go to the end, and we see that each dwarf has information on each of the variables. So far so good. This is where you find the data. On the variable view you have the variable definition. And you know now how to open the data file. Okay, let's have a look at some simple functions of SPSS. In SPSS we have all the important stuff we have on the second row here on the toolbar, where I hit File, and File, it's important, the save function. If you make any changes in the database, remember to save it, otherwise the changes will be lost. On Save As, you can save it in a different name if you prefer. We have Edit, we have View, we have Data. In Data, we can, for instance, split the file for non-smokers and smokers. For instance, if you go down here to Split File, we click on Split File, and we have the options Analyze all cases, do not create groups, as is at the moment. We can analyze the entire data set, or you can organize output by groups. We click on that, organize out by groups, and it asks you groups based on what. We would like to analyze separately non-smoking dwarfs and smoking dwarfs. So in that case, we can look for the variable smoking. We go to smoking status, we select it and click on the arrow, and smoking status appears now in groups based on. If you click down OK, this means that from now on the data is separate or splitted for smoking and non-smoking. So each time we run analysis, we're gonna give you first the results for the smoking dwarfs and then the results for non-smoking dwarfs. This means on one data set we basically created two different data sets. We also see that each time we give a command, a new window is opening, and a window which is called output file, as you can see down here, output 1, document 1, and this output file basically gives us all the results of the SPSS analysis. For the time being, let's close this file and we return to the data set. In data, we have also another function which means select cases. For instance, if you are interested in analyzing the entire data set, well, it's all cases selected. But sometimes we just would like to analyze the smoking dwarfs. We're not interested at all in non-smoking dwarfs. In that case, to select that the system only uses data for smoking dwarfs, you can click on if condition is satisfied. We click on if, and then we have to define. Okay, we just would like to have smoking dwarfs. Smoking was defined as 2. If the dwarfs have a 2 as an answer, means the dwarf is smoking. We select the smoking status and we define smoking equal to 2. Continue. OK. And from now on, the dataset only includes smoking dwarfs in our data analysis. The data will be now splitted until we unsplit it. So in order to unsplit it, we go back to split file, we select Analyze All Cases, Do Not Create Groups, and click on OK. Now we're going to have all the dwarfs again in data analysis. We also have to unsplit or unselect the select cases and go to all cases, and from now on we're going to have again the entire data set for analysis. The fifth item on the SPSS data file is transform. If you click on transform, we have basically two functions which are important for this course. The first is compute variable, and the second one is recode into different variables. Recode in different variable means that if you have a continuous variable, for instance systolic blood pressure, and we like to categorize it into two categories, for instance dwarfs who have a blood pressure of more than 140 and those who have a blood pressure less than 140. In compute variables, we can calculate a new variable. For instance, out of height and weight, we can calculate body mass index. How does this function work? To compute the body mass index, and this will be one of the tasks you're going to have in the data preparation, you put in compute variables, and it opens a new window. We can see here on the left side, it asks you what's the name of the target variable. This will logically be BMI, or body mass index. So we write BMI. Then we have to define, okay, what's the numeric expression of BMI? In order to calculate it, we need to use the existing variables we have. Body mass index is calculated by weight divided by height squared. So we select the weight of the dwarfs by clicking on the variable weight of dwarfs. We move it by clicking the arrow, and weight appears in the numeric expression window. Weight divided by height squared. So we add the dividing sign by clicking on it, and basically if you divide by height squared or if you divide twice by height, it's mathematically the same. So I'm going to choose height into the window and divide it one more time through height, and I got an expression which is the algorithm for body mass index. To continue, I click on OK, and the computer program will now calculate the body mass index for each of the dwarfs. I'm gonna close down this window, and you can see now in variable view appeared a new variable BMI. By default, it always records 2 decimals, which is fine for us. What we can do, we can now give a definition in label, write that this variable means the body mass index of the dwarfs. It's a continuous variable, so don't have to make any change. And then remember that we save the database, that we don't lose the information we have generated. If you'd like to recode a variable in different variables, we click on recode into different variable, and it first asks you which variables you would like to recode into categorical variable. We have, for instance, here education. Let's use the example of education. We click on education, we move it into the window, and now it appears in the numeric variable output variable window. It asks us education will be categorized into what? That's why we have the question mark. So we have to give the output variable name. Here on the right side we give the name to the output variable. For instance, we can call it education cat, which means educational categories. You can give any name you prefer. In the task, I'm gonna name the variables specifically, so I hope you're gonna use the variables I suggest you, the name I suggest. It still appears with a question mark until we click on change. Remember to click on change, otherwise you cannot continue with the definition of the variables. You click on change, and now the program knows that from education we're gonna calculate, or we're gonna recode the continuous variable into education categories. The next step is we have to tell the program, okay, what are the limits? How we're going to categorize the education. This we can define by clicking on old and new values. Click on old and new values, and we have a new window. This window is split into two parts. We have the part on the left, which is the continuous variable, and the part on the right, where you can define the characteristics of the categorical variable education cut. For instance, we would like to have that dwarfs who have less than 6 years of education, which means between 0 and 5, are category 1. We can here select a range lowest true value, which means from the lowest value the program can find up to 5 years of education. This will be the new value, category 1. We click on add, and it appears now from old to new that the old category 0 to 5 years of education will be the new category number 1. Now we'd like to have those who have between 6 and 7 years of education gonna be category 2, which we're gonna classify, for instance, as moderate education or average education. We can go to range, and we point like from 6 through 7, which means each dwarf who has between 6 and 7 years of education will be in that category. The new value will be 2. We click on add, and we have defined that if the dwarf has 6 to 7 years of education, it will be category 2. Finally, I'd like to have dwarfs who have 8 or more years of education, then will be in category 3. So we write range value 8 to the highest, which is 8 or more, will be the category 3. We write 3 and new values, we click on add, and now we define the entire education or the continuous variable education for dwarfs into 3 categories. To continuous, we need to click on continuous, we click on OK, and the system is going to calculate for each dwarf in which category he belongs to. So if they had between 0 and 5 years of education, then I'll be new in category number 1. Let's close the output window, and we can scroll down on the variable window, and we see that we have a new variable, education category. Consists of 2 decimals, but we don't need decimals, so we can actually change it to 0. We can write that this is the education categories of the dwarfs. If you go to values, we can define what the values mean, because at the moment each dwarf has 1, 2, or 3, or is categorized as 1, 2, and 3. If you click on this little gray box with the 3 little dots, we can define the values. So we find the value number 1, which is category 1, means low education, and we add it. Value 2 was average or called moderate education. We add it. Value 3 will be high education. We add it, and we click on OK. Now I've defined what does category 1, 2, and 3 mean. You see the measure, we have select nominal, basic, it's ordinal, so we can change it to ordinal because there's a natural gradient between low, moderate, and high. And don't forget to save the data. This is how we transform continuous variable into categorical variables. So at the moment you know how to split the data for some categorical variables, you know how to select cases, you can transform continuous variable into categorical ones, and you can calculate new variables using compute. SPSS, the 6th element, offers a lot of statistical tests which you can find in Analyze. In Analyze you're going to have a list of tests like descriptive statistics, compare means, and generally in the models we have here for instance regression analysis. Here you can find linear regression analysis or logistic regression analysis. If you go further down, you find non-parametric tests. As we know that certain data requires non-parametric tests in order to be analyzed, and survival functions. Next to analyze we have graphs, and in graphs in this function you're going to find information how to make pie charts, how to make histograms, how to make bar charts, and a lot of different kind of graphical information. For now, we're gonna end this video because the first step was that you're gonna learn how to transform variables, and in the next video, still in model number 1, I'm gonna show you how to run descriptive statistics. Thank you very much, and see you in the second part of model number 1 soon.